Hello and welcome to this VBA Unit 13 video. This is going to be our last hands-on project this semester. And what we're going to do is combine some things we've done, pull it all together in one neat project. It's going to be a survey app, but the data for the survey is going to come from a database. So we're going to have VBA user form and a VBA connection using a record set to a database, and show how those two things work together. So that's what it's going to be, and I'll just go ahead and give us our two homework exercises as we go through it. All right. So your first homework exercise, 13.1, is just right here, starting on page 2, kind of step you through it, and of course watch the video which you're watching right now. Now on this, we could go back to something we did, I believe it was Unit 11, where you created the survey app. I think it's actually going to be better to create it from scratch, just to reinforce, right? Reinforcement is a great way to learn. And I think you'll see that it might be easier to build it from scratch than to try to go back to your own code. And if you had one little step wrong, one little line wrong, it'll be more problematic because computers do what you tell them to do, not what you mean for them to do. So we're going to start from scratch. We're going to add a user form, and the user form is going to have a label, 4 buttons for the answers, and another button to say next question. So 5 command buttons and a label. And the name properties are going to be LBL question, LBL the 3-letter prefix for a label, and then BTN as a 3-letter prefix for the name property of answer A, answer B, answer C, answer D, and the button for next question. Remember that we want to change the name property. The name property is how VBA refers to all these objects, including the form and the buttons and the labels and the image and anything else we have in our VBA code is using this name property. The caption property is what the user sees. So, and this page 3 is just showing us what that's going to look like. Make sure we're in the properties window. Make sure we're changing the name property to be LBL question, not the caption property, which is what the user sees. You'll know you've got this done correctly before we write any code. You want to have all the user form created with the label and the 5 buttons, and you want the names to be correct names, what we're expecting them to be for the code we're about to write. And you can confirm this in the properties window by looking at the drop down and just looking at the names. It'll be alphabetical. You should see BTN answer A, BTN button answer B, button answer C, button answer D, BTN for button next question, LBL question, and then the user form. If we wanted to change the name property there, we could. In our code, we're not referencing the user form, so we don't need to change the name property. We're going to reference all of these controls in our code, so we want to go ahead and change the name property before we get to those. Okay? Now, that seems like a lot, but it's not that bad. All right? So let's just see through this. Pull up Excel, go under the Developer tab, to get to the VB code window, or just press Alt F11 to pull up the code editor window. And I always have to resize this. Sorry. And get this to fit in our window here, our recording window. And have trouble getting the window to resize. Yeah, this is good stuff for video, I know. Okay. And there we got that to fit in. So in our project window, we're going to add a user form, which we do by right-clicking in the project window. We say Insert a User Form. Okay. And on this user form, we're going to add a label. So in our toolbox, we find the label control, which is right here. The hover over tells us the label control, and we put the label in here. We're going to add a series of command buttons. So I'm going to add the first command button. I'll put it in here. If I want to change things like the text and all of this, I could change these properties now. If I want to make the text, for example, the font text, make it 12 point. Right, that's probably too big to get the text question in there. But I would set this up to be exactly the way I want it. I'll go ahead and make it 10 point. And when I copy this, it'll copy the size and the properties. So I select it, and then I right-click copy, and then click on the form and paste, and that command button, even though it says command button 1 is a caption, it's command button 2 over here in the properties window. It's got the same size and font and all those properties. Again, right-click copy, then Control-V paste, right-click copy, click on the user form, Control-V paste. Okay. So now I've got 4 buttons that are going to correspond to the answer 1, answer 2, answer 3, answer 4. I need one more command button, so let me go ahead and do one more copy here. Copy, one more paste. And for this one, this is going to be the next question. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Might even scoot it down a little bit more. Okay. So those are the controls without any of the names changed. And you can make this as big or small or whatever you want to, right? But placing these on here, getting back to our document, we're trying to look something like this. So I can see that this first one it's a little bit wider than what I've done, helps the text show up a little bit. And we can resize these when we're finished. If the question text ends up being too big for the label, or if the answer text ends up being too big for one of the buttons, we'll come back and tweak these as we need to. But the main thing is that I want to get the name properties for these controls right. So let's do that. Let's get the name properties. So for this first control, this label, I'm going to change. I can see right now the names are generic, command button 1, command button 2, label 1, user form 1. So I select the label control, go to the name property of the label control, and I can change this to be LBL question. And it's important to spell these name properties correct, because we're going to use LBL question in the VBA code that we're writing to reference this control and change the caption property of this control based on the data from the database. The command button 1 name property becomes BTN answer A, I believe is what we call those. BTN answer A, correct. BTN answer B, answer C, answer D, and BTN next question. So let's do all those. BTN answer B, BTN answer C, BTN answer D, and BTN next question. Okay. So easy enough. We can check that we changed the name property. I can do my drop-down list, and I should see answer A, answer B, answer C, answer D, button next question, and LBL question in the user form. Let me confirm that real quick. Check the drop-down list. Yep. Button answer A, answer B, answer C, button answer D, button next question, label question. Good. So we're in good shape. We're following right along here with what we want to do. After the name properties have been set, right, and that's the most important thing, because we reference the name property in code, and after it looks the way you want it to look and feel, you can write this code. So here's the code that we're going to write. And I actually have this code repeated. Here's the code, what it looks like in the VBA editor. And that works well. That's perfectly fine. Sometimes editors display text differently. So I've got the exact same code, what it looks like in the Notepad++. I don't know which is better. The exclamation point's a little easier to see, and some things are easier to see. But here's the code. So we're going to write this code, and as we write this code, we'll talk about it. So actually, here's what I'll do. I'll read through the code here, and you type it, and then after I read through the code, I'll stop the program, type it in real quick. So let's just see what we're doing here. Shouldn't be a lot of new things. This should be familiar with this. Option explicit, you know what that does. The option explicit tells the VBA editor that when you run the code, all variables have to be defined. Declare a connection. The variable name we're giving it is mycon, but it is a ADODB.connection. Now let me go ahead and do that line, just because I'm going to go view code. As this gets me into the code editor window, and it looks like I had the font size be rather large here from doing something before. Let's take this back down to 14 font. All right, looks like there's a little too much. So option explicit, and then the ADODB. Now you won't have the ADODB unless it's in your tool references. This is from last class. You remember we went through this and we made sure that we added the Microsoft ActiveX Unit 11, I believe it was, Microsoft ActiveX. And see, we don't have the Microsoft ActiveX controls here. So that didn't persist. So I have to go down to alphabetically here, go down to the M's. And on the Microsoft ActiveX data objects, the most recent of these is 6.1. So I click that on. And now, under Tools, References, Microsoft ActiveX data object 6.1 is checked. With this Microsoft ActiveX data objects checked, I can reference the ADODB dot, and it'll pull up connection for a type. Okay. So my con as ADODB, so it knows ADODB dot connection, and it knows connection. Okay. If you're not getting that code complete, it's because you don't have the ActiveX data objects in your tools options list. Okay. And getting back to our code, declare my RS as an ADODB record set. Remember, the connection is where you specify the type of the database and the location of the database, and the record set is where you specify the SQL command that you're going to use to access the database, and the record set holds the results of the SQL query so that you can then use it in your VBA program. I'm also going to declare a variable called record count. It's just an integer. It's just going to tell us, are we on the first question, second question, third question, how many questions are we in this record set. Each record in the database is one question. The question text, the 4 answers, and the correct answer. So a record is basically a survey question, and we have 5. Here's the database. I'll pull it up real quick. So this is the one I'm going to use. You created a database for me back in Unit 11, and you can use your survey database if you want to, or you can use this one. I'll put this out here on the Blackboard for you to have access to. And it's got some tables we're not using. The questions table is the one that we're going to populate. And if I open it up, you'll see that it's got a question ID field, a question text field, 4 answers, and a correct. If I look at this from the design view instead of the data set view, the most important thing here is, again, just like variables have to be named exactly correctly, and the name property of objects has to be exactly correct for our code, so does the field name in the database has to be exactly what I call it when I reference it in VBA code. Right? So if you did your database with different field names, your code will need to reflect your database's field names. But I think these are the ones that I'm using in this example, and these are the field names that appear in the code we're going to look at. And then the datasheet view shows us what the actual questions are. What is the name of the planet closest to the sun in our galaxy? How long is one leap year? And so on. Okay, so that's our database. We've got a subroutine here, user form initialize. This is this subroutine will execute when the user form is being created on the fly to show it for the first time for the user to see it. So what we're going to do as part of that setup, that initializing of the database, we're going to call get record set, which is this subroutine here, and we're going to call show question, which is this subroutine. So what does get record set do? Well, get record set is it creates an instance of my connection, right? So we declared it here, but we have to say new because these are special data types, not default data types like integer and double and string, because these are special data types. We tell it what type it's going to hold, but we have to say new to actually get it up and running. So we're creating the new connection, the new record set. The connection is just like we did in Unit 11. We specify the provider, Microsoft.ace.oledb.12.0, and then a semicolon. And then if you want it to be on the same line, you can just continue it, or you can close the string, space underscore to do a carriage return, and continue on the next line. This space underscore means continue on the next line. If you go back to Unit 11, you'll see that we didn't use this carriage return, this space underline to do a continue on the next line, and we wrote it out as one long string. Doesn't make any difference as long as you do the syntax correct. You can break it up into 2 strings, do a space underscore and then a carriage return, and continue on the next line. So ampersand data space, there's a space there, data space source equals C : / and then whatever your path is on your machine where you have your database, / survey.aac for access database, DB. Okay. in my case, if I look at my database, I can see that my path is C:/BDAN410, no spaces, / survey AAC/DB, AAC for access. Okay, so that'll be the path name that I will type in. You'll type in whatever path name is appropriate for your machine. Maybe you have a BDAN410 folder on your C drive, and that'd be great. But wherever you put it, that's fine. So specify the connection, open the connection. If it opens, great. It means we found the database and it knew the type of it. The record set, the connection for the record set is the mycon we just created, and then the source is a SQL command. In this case, we're selecting star from questions. I could have just said questions, I think, but select star from questions makes it clear we're talking about a SQL command. myrs.open, great. So we have a connection to a database, and we have a SQL command to select all the data from the questions table of the database. We're good. Record count equals 1. So at the end of get record set, the connection is still open and the record set still exists. That's fine. We're going to process this record set, and then we'll close it when we're done. Show question, anytime I call show question, it'll take the current record set data, and it will copy it from the record set into the user form controls, the label question, button A caption, button B caption, button C caption, button B D caption, and the next question caption. And it'll probably be next question most of the times, but these question answers will change. And the way we do it is the name of the record set, myrs, bang, an exclamation point, myrs, exclamation point, the field from the database, question text, right? So again, it's got to match this. It's got to be question text. And it is question text. The reason this has to be QUESTIONTEXT is because this, the database field, is QUESTIONTEXT. So you can call it whatever you want in the database, just make sure you call it the same thing when you programmatically reference it in your VBA code. So whatever the current question and answer is, it's going to show up on our user form because of this code. Me.caption is equal to question and then ampersand record count, which is an integer. So it's going to be question 1, question 2, question 3. Well, what is me? Me always refers to the user form. Okay. So even though this might be me might be inside some other control, me is the form itself. So the user form, the label or the caption of the user form, the upper left-hand corner text of the user form, when you run it, it's going to say question 1, question 2, question 3. All right. So we'll see that, for example, right there, right? Question 1. That text right there is coming from this code that we're looking at right here. The only other code that we have to write, and we're almost done, right, at least with this first problem, is a subroutine for clicking the next button. So we'll write that code, and going into VBA here, remember that the way we write code is from the drop-down list. By the way, this caption one, that caption text is going to change when the program runs, so I don't worry about the fact that it says caption command button 1 in each of those and label 1. The code we're doing is going to make that change. I want an event procedure for this button, which I can see over here is next question. And I can do it 2 ways. I can double click on the control itself and it'll create the stub for me. Okay. Or in the code window, when I view the code, I could see my list of drop downs. And again, these are all my control names. See how they have the names that we gave the name property? The name property is really, really important. I can select button next question from that drop down list, and it'll say, did you mean the click event for the button? Because that's the most common event. I say, yes, I did. So it'll create that stub for me. And then in that stub, the code is going to be record set dot move next. That means the next record. If record count equals record count plus 1. So now I'm on record 2. If record set dot EOF, that means you're at the end of file. You've gone past the last piece of data. If it is EOF, then a message box, quiz complete, and I'll call the subroutine close everything. That's if the record set is EOF, end of file, you're done with the data. Else, if it's not end of file, I'll call show question, which is this routine here. We're going to call it again, and we're going to take the new question text and make it appear in the label, the new answer A in the first button, and so on. Close everything, record set close, connection close, unload me refers to the form. Okay, so that code, if you haven't already started typing that in, go ahead and type that in, and I'm going to pause while I type it so you don't watch me sit here and type away, and then I'll come right back once I've typed it. Okay, so I think we got all the code written. When we run this, first the font. If you wonder about the font and how it looks different, that is something you can change by going under the tools and the options in the VBA editor. And in the editor format, you can change it from Arial narrow to whatever you want it to be. What's the one that's real common? I'm trying to think of what. Oops. Just regular Arial. Sometimes for making it fit on the screen, I might change it to something different. Now I'm going to try to run this, and if it's going to fail, the most likely place it will fail is here or here. That I'm not have a typo in one of those places. Now it'll fail. It'll actually the line that fails will actually be the open command for the connection or the open command for the record set. But if the open command for the connection fails, it's because there's something wrong with my connection string data source. And if the open command for the record set fails, it's because there's something wrong with my my SQL command. So let's see what happens here. For some reason, when I type this, it doesn't work. Sometimes I have to copy and paste it from the File Explorer. We'll see if that works out, if that's the case this time. So if it runs correctly, it'll pull up a user box and it'll change all this text. If it doesn't run correctly, we'll deal with it. So we try running it, and okay, so we're getting an error. Specifically, if we look at this message, it's telling us that c:/bdan410/survey.aacdb is not a valid path. Okay, make sure the path name is correct. And if I were to say, so it failed there. So let's see here. If I actually pull up a File Explorer, I can see my survey. By the way, this lock copy of it here, when the database is open, like it is right now, there is the database is locked, so somebody else can't open it. And you can see the icon even has this little lock on it, and there's an L for lock in the name of the file. So it's survey AACDB, and then there's the same name with an L in it. So that just means it's locked. When I close the access file, the lock file goes away. But it's visible right now because the database is open. Actually, now that I think about it, that probably is the problem. It probably can't access a database because I've got it open. So let me shut the database, and the lock goes away. Very good. And try running this again without the lock. So pull up the user form and run it. Okay, so there is still a problem. And if you go in the navigator window and just click into the path part, it'll give you the abbreviated. I'm going to right click and copy that. c:/bdan410. It's exactly what I had typed, but for whatever reason, it doesn't like it sometimes. Okay. And survey AACDB is the name of the file, right? I'll copy that as well, and then paste that in. And you wouldn't think that would make a difference, but it does. And I'm not sure what the magic sauce is there. But if you have that same problem, give that solution. And where'd this text? I never typed in what is the name of the planet closest to the sun of the galaxy. Neptune, Venus, Mercury, Mars. The buttons aren't doing anything because we haven't written any code for the buttons. But the next question does something. It moves us to the next question. Question 2. How long is one leap year? Right? That probably should say days, but 326, 356, 355, 354. Question 3. Which ocean is on the west coast of the United States? What is 95 plus or minus 9? The Earth revolves around, and then when I hit next question this time, since there's only 5 questions in my database, I'm going to be EOF will be true. I'm at the end of the file, and our code in our VBA code said that if we're EOF, we say message box quiz complete. And then after this message box, we shut everything down. We close the connection. We close the record set. We close the record set, close the connection, and close the user form. And everything shuts down smoothly. Okay, so that's the code that we just got through discussing and how that code works. So get that typed, get that running, and at this point, you'll be where you need to be for this problem. You can stop for full credit at this point. Okay. If you want to do work, if you want to spend some time on this and make it better, because you'd like to get the feedback, yes or no, this answer is correct or not correct, count how many questions I got correct out of 5 questions. If you want to do work to make this better, I'll give you 1 point extra credit. It's not much. But if you kind of got the programmer bug in you, right, you probably want to try to do this stuff to make it work better. So let's just see some ways. So again, you can stop right now, get full credit, save your work, and you're done. Right? When you have your program doing this, I guess I could, if I wanted to, could come over here and do like we did before and say, add a button here that says, create a new button. So it gives me this button one click here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say user form one.show, right? And when I'm back here on this, so when I click this, it'll trigger it this way from code. See how easy that is? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. End of question, right? So it's real easy to do something like that. I could right click on this and edit the text and say start quiz, start survey. All right. Question 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it's kind of cool, right? We're when you understand how to program and understand the computer will do exactly what you tell it to do, not what you meant for it to do. The same thing's true when you're just writing a formula in Excel, except we can do this with VBA code that complements the power of Excel to pull up a user form, to access a database, to do the things that we want to do. It's kind of a neat project. So this is fine. You can stop here. If you want to do a little more, I'll go ahead and continue this video to talk about the plus 1 point X credit. It's not probably going to make a difference on your grade. I can't imagine that 1 point is going to make the difference for anybody's grade in the class. It's just for those who want to do a little more code and see what it does. So there's some things we can do, some ways we can make it. One, when the user clicks a guess, you can give them feedback by saying VB green if the answer was correct, right? So btn answer a dot back color equals VB green. That will set on the right hand side, VB green will become update the value on the left, the back color of the button will be green. If the answer is wrong, you could use the constant VB red as the constant for a color to be the back color of an answer that was wrong. When showing a question, reset all the colors to light gray so you get rid of all the red and the green from the previous question, because you don't want a correct answer and an incorrect answer to propagate through. So you can say that the RGB is 220, 220, 220, which just works out to be something close to a default gray. You can make the next question button enabled and disabled appropriately so that you can't move on to the next question until you've given an answer. You can do that by setting the enabled property of the next question button to true, or the enabled property of the next the enabled property of the next question to true when you're ready to move on, and you can turn on and off the button question so they can answer with true and false. Count how many questions are correct. Have an extra variable, correct count, every time you get a correct answer. That goes up, and at some point your code might say something like you got 3 out of 5 questions correct. Your percent is correct count divided by record count, right? 60%. So your program would look like this. So it's the same thing. The next question is disabled until you give an answer. The name of the planet closest to the sun. If you collect the correct answer, it gives you a green highlight. Okay. Now the buttons are turned off, and you can click next question to go to the next question. When you click next question, that's an interesting, it turned it red there. But when you go to the next question, it removes the color highlights, shows you the new question text, the next question button is turned off, and so on. Quiz complete, 3 out of 5, 60%. So to do some of this code, this is a little more, what's the best way to do this? So part of showing a question, for example, is I'm going to make sure that all the color text from the previous answers are gone. So I'm going to go back here and use this line here, btn answer a dot back color. Right. So part of the RGB 220, 220, 220. I could have said something. I don't know if there's a VB gray actually, as weird as that is. And I'll repeat this code for question answer B, C, and D. The only thing I'm going to change is the names of those are B, C, and D. Okay. So when I show a question, I reset the buttons to be gray. I'm already setting the next caption property. I also, let's see. So when I make a guess. So when I click on command button 1, I need to either say btn answer A is red or btn answer A is green or red. Okay. How do I make that decision? Well, I need to know if A is the right answer. What's the right answer? The right answer is in the record set using the database field correct, right? So if my record set, the field correct is equal to an A, right? Then I'll set this button's color to be VB green. Else is equal to VB red. Okay. See how we did that? And now if I want to do this as a single line command, that's fine. Yep. So that will happen when I click question 8. Let's just see what that does without anything else. Okay. Before we do anything else, let's just see what that does. I can run it from Excel. Click Start Survey. What was wrong there? RGB. The computer does what you say, not what you meant. Red, green, blue, not red, blue, green. Okay. Computers are dumb, not smart. They do what you say, not what you mean. Okay, now I didn't click anything for the last 3 buttons, but I did for this first button. And in this case, in this question, A was wrong. Okay, go to the next question. Notice that I reset everything back to gray. In the second question, A is wrong. Third question, A is right. Fourth question, A is wrong. Fifth question, A is right. Quiz complete. Okay. Now, as I'm going through those, I could do more, right? So it's just every little step we do, we know exactly what it's doing. So in addition to calling it correct, I also want to keep up with this variable here, correct count, right? I'm pretty sure that was the name of the variable. Let me see what it was called. Correct count, okay? So when I get a green answer, I also say that correct count equals correct count plus 1. I don't update correct count for a red answer. That red means wrong, right? But if that's the correct answer, A for A, then I do that. I update the correct count. And when it's all said and done, and our all said and done code is close everything, right? Or right after we say quiz complete, right? So right after we say quiz complete, I'm going to do these 2 things. Message box, you got correct count out of correct count, out of record count, okay? And message box, your percent score is, format percent is a way that'll make it look like a percent. Correct count divided by record count. Your percent score And I'm doing here, just as a reminder, this is going back to things we did before, right? A quote begins and ends. That space, I want that space to appear. You got space. Correct count without quotes, so it's going to give me the value of that. And then I concatenate. We keep concatenate. A string literal, concatenate variable without quotes, concatenate string literal. I want a space to appear there. Right? So format percent. Correct count divided by record count. Okay. I've got option explicit up here at the very, very top. So if I've done any variable names that I haven't declared, it'll tell me. Again, only button 1 is, I have code for button 1. So button 1, incorrect. Button 2, button 1, incorrect. Question 3, it's correct. Question 4, incorrect. Question 5, it's correct. Quiz complete. You got 2 out of 5, 40%. Okay. So we can do this stuff and just keep making our program a little bit better. So what about answer B? Well, answer B code is going to be a lot like the answer A code, right? I have to make it, I'm looking for a B instead of an A, and I want to make button B turn green or button B turn red, but other than that, it's the same. And the code for C is the same as it is for A, except I'm testing for a C as the correct answer, and C back color, C back color. And D the same way. I'm testing for a D as the correct answer, and D is the back color, and D is the back color. So now, with that code, I can answer any of these. So I can say Mars. You know, I'm answering question D for all 5 of these, and only got 1 out of 5 correct. And question 2, only got 1 out of 5 correct. Okay, 20%. So that's working. So that's kind of cool. What else do we have in here? Oh, so the only thing I'm not doing now is enabling and disabling the buttons. Don't want to do that? Sure. If you do this, if you're still watching this and you're this far along and you've done that code and you want to turn this in, I'll give you the bonus for sure. Let's just talk about these enabling and disabling. Do I want to even say those? You know what? I think I'm just going to take those out because that's more confusing than I need it to be. Well, since I'm here. When I load a question, let's go to our code here. When you show a question, I'm going to make the next question button disabled. So what this is doing is when you load a new question, you can't click next question. You have to answer a question. When do I change this? On any question, right? Anytime you give an answer, regardless of whether the answer is right or not, I say that btn next question enabled is equal to true. Okay. So, oops. So when you click A, you can then move on to the next question. When you click B, you can move on to the next question. When you click C, you can move on to the next question. When you click D, you can move on to the next question. Okay. So now what that does is when the form loads, I can't click the next question. This button is disabled until I make a guess. Mercury, now I can click next question. Leap year, now I can click next. West Coast, West Coast is the Pac-10, right? Atlantic is the East Coast. 95 plus and minus 9 is the same thing as minus. So 95 minus 9 is 86. And you see how this next question is disabled and enabled based on my guess. The Earth revolves around the sun. All right. Look at that. 5 out of 5, 100%. Pretty darn cool, right? The code does what you say. Programs aren't smart. They do exactly what we say. Every line of code in here has a purpose, has a meaning. What it's doing is it's making our program do the things we want it to do. Okay, great. So if you want to add this, for +1, you can. Otherwise, you're probably not even listening to this anyway, and you've already done. So have a great day.